because it's impossible. I mean, what's the point in doing a podcast where we can't get excited? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 3 of the End Podcast. You can find us on all the usual outlets, on SoundCloud, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Instagram, on Twitter, and what am I missing out here? Is that everything? I think that... YouTube! We're on YouTube. Yeah. We're on YouTube. There we go, the full set. I am Matt, formerly known as Marvel Spank. You will find me absolutely nowhere on social media anymore. And this is absolutely glorious to say. Tim's having a week off. It's Brian! Pew, 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 pew!
Well, he's the man that's formerly known as, but I am especially known to y'all motherfuckers who don't know me as Brian Boogie Down Brown. Find me on all platforms as Boogie Down Brown. On Twitter as Boogie Down, which is BO0GIDEDOWN. Everywhere else at the Brown, and that's how we get down.
Yeah, I've missed that so much. And welcome home. Welcome home.
Indeed.
So, there have been various reports on Nerdery YouTube that either Spider-Man's going to be a part of Venom 2 or 3, or Venom is going to be a part of the ongoing Spider-Man IP when it reverts to Sony. First of all, I'd like to know, not that we have any hardcore proof at this moment in time, but how would you feel about it? Do you think these two things need to cross over? Is it inevitability, or is this just balderdash and poppycock?
Like, first and foremost, Sony just needs to step up their CGI. Like, I'm not excited about any of it. None of it looks like anything to me. I mean, Carnage looks like Carnage, but then if you don't know anything about the character and you look, you just these squirmy, splodgy things jumping around the screen and stuff. Yeah. And what gives it any gravitas is its connection to Spider-Man. Yeah, the box office talking, but
that first Venom film, like, let's not make any mistakes. Box office is box office.
Yeah.
But Venom is its own bankable IP. Like, if we can get Ant-Man making 700 million, then we shouldn't be shocked that something the size of Venom can make 700 million. I think it's contextualized by people's negativity, and that's why it's celebrated. But Venom's a big deal, especially at the moment, because, you know, like, there's a seminal run coming to an end with Donny Cates. It's in the zeitgeist once again. I think you're right, though, with the CGI. And one of the things that stood out to me was when you can't afford CGI, you always do it at night time.
Yeah.
Because then you don't have to worry about reflections and shadows and everything like that. And Venom did that very well.
And the fights are inside rooms and buildings. And okay, great. You know, let's give it another slant. It could be the antithesis of everything that Spider-Man is, which is day glow, bright, in the daytime. And Venom is going to eat you, bite your head off, and it's going to be at night, and he's going to say some swear words and shit. So it could be like, just totally like, yo, this is not that.
You make a very good point, actually, something that I hadn't thought about, that is one of the big benefits of Venom and Spider-Man being, whether it's produced by Marvel or Marvel Studios or not, is that disconnection to Disney. It makes it a lot easier to cross over two properties with very different identities. And I think that difference in identity is actually what makes the juxtaposition between Spider-Man and Venom work. One's sort of like a relentless dark force, and one's unrelenting force for good, and that's shown in the cinematic styles of both the films. So if they were to cross them over, there's a very good dichotomy visually that already exists because of the tonal differences of both the films and the way they are shot. Did you hear there was a standing ovation for it in the test screenings?
No.
3 minutes.
I mean, there's generally, I mean, I don't get into it like that, but across my feeds, it's generally just good vibes about this film.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love Woody. And then there's the pantheon of symbiotes that are going to probably show up. Scream, and the likelihood of Spider-Man, let me not say Tom being in it, but Spider-Man, is because this is
caveating.
Yeah, this is Tom's last contracted Spider-Man. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to be like RDJ cropping up all over the shop. Definitely going to be a multiverse of madness, he says. So he could definitely crop up in Venom. He's young enough to.
He looks young enough. He looks young enough.
Yeah, there you go. He's got the look. But, how old is RDJ? Like, I'm sure he gets to a point where you just get, like, the money's good, the life is good. But...
Have you noticed, though, the amount of drip to the waist time that RDJ did in the films? Like, there was a point where he went, like, I don't have to wear the uniform, the costume. Like, I imagine the first couple of times it's rad as fuck. But then, with Olivia Munn, when she was having to get full body naked Vaseline, which is some behind the scenes footage I'd like to fucking be privy to. But, like, full Vaseline to squeeze into a skin tight suit. At least this is kind of like you're being built up to be a robot, not just a sexy woman in a suit. Do you know what I mean? But even then, this is the funny thing, right? RDJ said, I don't want to have to wear that costume anymore. Yeah. So they were CGI-ing his costume prior to Karen Gillan having to shave her head.
Oh, no.
There must have been a point where she was going, you made me shave my fucking head, but yet you can make a whole robot for Robert.
Oh, no.
That stinks.
Yeah. But I think he was exec producing by that time, no?
Yeah.
So he's got money galore. So you're not even going to say nothing. You'll be like, I'm glad to be in this film. Thank you.
Yeah. And to be fair, that was the first point when I realised with Karen Gillan that how much, to use a phrase that you coined, gravitas that she had in America. And it's the same with like Matt Smith. Like, I didn't realise that Doctor Who was so much profile over there that if you were... David Tennant now he's like almost A-list, or maybe B-list because he's not Brad Pitt or like Scarlett Johansson. But like he's
up there. When people see him, they sit up. Yeah.
Probably like Idris Elba levels. You know what I mean?
But I expect to see Tom. But at this stage, it can stand alone because there's so much amazing stuff that's happening with Stage 4. Venom, fortunately, doesn't need Spider-Man now. A lot of people are just so gassed about Carnage.
I think picking up on another thing that you said with all the different symbiotes, I think that Johnny Joe Public will get very tired if it follows the comics path of progression whereby there's an undefeatable symbiote that then gets defeated, but then there's an offspring or a blend of that and something else. That then becomes more unstoppable, ultimately stoppable. My exclusive reading history with Carnage was the Jerry Conway 2015 run, and it is so good. I still think to this day it's the best Marvel horror I've read. He was paired with a guy called Sam Perkins that I think did colours and inks, which is always a thing for me because then you've got complete creative control. He created this like claustrophobia of being in the middle of nowhere. You can be claustrophobic from small spaces, but then if you can't escape the biggest space ever, if it just goes on forever, there's that sort of impending trapped feeling. It's so good. It is so good. But there was a point maybe 3/4 of the way through where I can't remember what the new symbiote that was the most deadliest was called.
Right.
But at that point, I just went, oh, for fuck's sake. You could have just cut this whole thing out and it would have been a better story for it. It was like a 12 issue maybe, and if this was 10, it would have been absolutely perfect. So I actually think that Venom to last, it needs Spider-Man, and it needs it quickly, because you can't just keep doing... What was the guy called in the first one? Like Strife or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah,
not Strife. What was it called?
Something... I don't know.
Exactly, and that's the point. For people that aren't into Venom, it's just another symbiote. And once you've gone to Carnage, everything else is just... Do you know what I mean?
I'm looking for it now. I want to add it to this series to my reading list, so I can say, well, if that's kicking it as one of the best.
It's so good, so good. I've not read any real sort of Carnage previously or since, but it was so good. I mean, I've got the omnibus upstairs, but I've just fallen out of love with omnibuses. It's just too much, man. Like, variety's the spice of life. Why would you want to spend like 20 days reading the same thing?
That's the thing. And then you dip in and dip out, and then you just don't dip back in again.
Yeah, that's why I'm on like my color coded from rainbow red all the way back down to purple is currently on dark blue. Like I've run out of bookmarks. I've almost done the full circle.
Wow.
Well, I've almost finished the Invincible Compendium one. I've got New Mutants Volume 2 Epic Collection, and to be honest, the Brubaker cap, I know it's heresy, but it was just, I found it like, it was...
See, the thing is, that's the thing. Some stories, when you go back, there's been so many things, because that's like, that set a precedent at the time. And there's been better stories since. When you go back to the precedent, you're like, a bit drab.
It's turgid. It is so heavy. It's so heavy and dark. And I can imagine if at the time you've gone from stars and stripes, punching Nazis. I know that's like well in the past, but like then all of a sudden you've got like this dark and brooding, like everything like it's been set in the DCU and it's all about emotions and that sort of shit. I was like, I can't say, I wouldn't say I'm not enjoying it, but I'd just like to actually enjoy it.
It can't be as hard as Alan Moore when we did that. Come on now.
I'll be honest with you, dude. I've only got about 3 or 4 issues in. It's like Alan Moore wrote it. It really is. Except that you don't get a sense of impending genius. What was the one that we did? V for Vendetta?
Yeah.
Like, you persevered, but then there was a point. Well, I can remember texting you like on the 3rd act or something going, shit, this guy's a genius, isn't he?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
I don't know. I mean, I love Brubaker's stuff.
Oh, he's one of the goats.
Yeah. But I was like that with Elephant Men. I was just like, wow, this is really bloody good. It's blending so many aspects of now and future and possible futures and stuff. Very dystopian, but very possible. Really getting into it. And I just started buying hardbacks, omnibuses, and just stacking them on my shelf. And they're just there. They just look pretty now, and I haven't even finished the 2nd volume.
Well, no, I've been running through Transmetropolitan for about 3 or 4 years, and because I know it's so good, I have 4 of them left, and I read probably one every 6 months or every 4 months. I know it's that good. It's always like a tonic. It's an intervention for whatever I'm reading. And because I've read so much Zdarsky in the last couple of weeks for that today I thought, you know what, reading another volume of anything isn't going to change the podcast. I'm going to go out, have a nice breakfast. I go to this place called Geno's that's up the road, and it's set like in the middle of a park. They relocated the Everard's brewery, but they did it so it has like a restaurant and all that, and they like redeveloped the whole area into nice sort of parkland. Parkland as opposed to like being industrial waste. So you sit outside, add a muffin, add a toasty, add a coffee.
Easy.
And then I sat there with Transmetropolitan. And it's a funny thing. I was sat there in the first issue fine. I'm surrounded by old age pensioners and young families taking advantage of Saturday morning. And I'm basically turned to the 2nd issue in like volume 9 or whatever it was. And it's basically illustrated pornography. So, like, I'm trying to read it with, like, opening it about 3 inches.
But then you just look sus. You look even more sus.
And then what you forget, though, you're doing that sat next to a glazed facade of the people that are sitting at the table next to the window.
You're just like, Rombo.